Konnichiwa, Genki desu ka? Ken-chan back with another episode of Go Mega Otaku Gamer Alpha. The last episode I opened with like a little thing, a little magazine thing where I was showing an old magazine for the Texas Instruments TI-99. Well, we're going to do something a little similar here. Take a look here. Like I said, I collect these old magazines as well. And these are in plastic, of course. These are old issues of Atari Age magazine. Look at that, E.T. Ooh. Yeah, right. And these are, you know, from the 80s. I think you had to special order these. You couldn't just like walk into a store and purchase these, you know, off a magazine rack or something like that. You had to join the club, I think, the Atari Club. And yeah, here's where the Atari Club was located then, at 1700 Walnut Street in Philadelphia. At least that was the, I guess, whatever you want to call it, the local Atari Club. These magazines were pretty cool. They were thin. There wasn't that much to them. Here's a thing that tells you how to build a left-handed joystick. You take the joystick apart and you turn the thing around inside of it, and it makes it left-handed. Captain's log, you know, letters to the editor type thing there, I guess. Here's some more letters that people wrote in, you know. Ms. Pac-Man! Yeah, remember this? Oh, yes, and you know, you can zip down memory lane looking at these old magazines. They have a very nostalgic appeal. Here is a sneak peek, for example, of a joystick they were planning on making for the Atari 2600. Now, this magazine was out before the 7800. This magazine was even out before the 5200. And Atari, to introduce advanced controller for VCS, anybody that knows what the Atari 7800 is knows that this is the design they went with for the 7800. And that was, you know, 2 consoles later for Atari, but they had been kicking around this idea for a long time. So there's a little tidbit for you. But anyway, you get the idea. This is a fantastic little magazine you could get by joining the Atari Club. And this is leading us up to the machine that we're going to talk about today, which is the Atari 2600, or VCS, as it was also known as. Now, the Atari 2600 was put out and released at a time when home computers were things like the MSI or the Altair. Nobody was really doing it. The only people that did those things were enthusiasts and real hardcore nerds. There was no real purpose for home computers yet. About the time that the Atari came out, Apple also came out with the Apple II. It was like around 1977 when this stuff started cropping up. And of course, you know, the Apple II had so many consumers that bought that. But the Atari 2600 was really the first machine that made computing fun. There was there was now actually a home application for a computer. You know, they went from being these things that were big number crunchers and things you could figure out payroll with, to something you could actually play with and have some fun with. And the Atari 2600 probably did more, in my opinion, probably did more to advance home computers than Apple did with their first Apple computer. Now, the Atari 2600 was released in October of 1977 by Atari, and it's basically, it's given credit for being the first system to use cartridges, you know, and a microprocessor and all that. But it's really not, that's really not the case. The first console to do that was really the Fairchild Channel F. It's just nobody knows what that is or where that is. The Atari 2600 is a second generation console. It was available in North America on October 14th, 1977, in the EU in 1978, and in Japan in 1983. 83. Quite a bit later. In Japan, it was known as the Atari 2800. They added 200 to it for some reason. It was discontinued on January 1st, 1992. Thing ran a long time, buddy. That's a long time to run. And they had cartridges come out for it. The media that it used was ROM cartridges and also tape. There were some people making tape cassette games that plugged into it and did that kind of thing. The CPU was an MOS 6507 at 1.19 megahertz. The memory was 128 bytes of RAM with 4 kilobytes of ROM. 128 bytes of RAM. 128 bytes. That is nothing. Okay? It used joystick paddles. It had a driving controller, a trackball, and a keypad. It actually had an online service called GameLine. Google it. The best-selling game was Pac-Man. Yeah, that's what I said. Pac-Man. Pac-Man was the best-selling game. 7 million units as of September 1st, 2006. The predecessor was Atari Pong. The successor was the Atari 5200. And that's the 2600 in a nutshell. There were multiple different versions of the Atari 2600. There was the wood grain thing. There was the Vader. There was the Junior. I have the Vader and the Junior. So we're going to take a look at both of those right now. Now this is my Vader model here, and I'm assuming that they call it that because of this black region right here. This used to be where the wood grain finish went. Actually, I don't know if it was finish. It was just wood grain paper that they put over top of it on like a sticker or something. But anyway, the original 2600s actually had 3 switches on either side. Okay, these they dumbed it down to 2, and they put the other switches back here. This was for difficulty, controller difficulty. They used to have that here with among these. This is your power switch here. Color black and white, because people still had black and white televisions aplenty in 1977, and in 1980, and in 1983, and in 1984. Black and white televisions didn't really phase out right away. It took a while. Game select and game reset, and a lot of the Atari 2600 games had multiple different versions of the same little 4K thing on one cartridge, so you had different options here. As I said, these were difficulty switches here. This is the this is the power right here. You plug the power supply into this. Joystick here. Channel selector. Very basic, very simple, and of course the video comes out of here, and that does not detach. Yeah, a little tidbit about this, and any Atari 2600 really. If you take a good look at the plug here, you can plug a Sega Genesis pad into this and get better control out of it than if you use the standard Atari joysticks. Those joysticks, while cool and while having that retro feel and that retro appearance to them, which is lovely, they're not very adequate for this kind of game, and they weren't even that good for this kind of thing. You can get much better control if you have an old Sega Genesis controller lying around, or there's someplace near you where you can go get one. I would recommend getting one for actually playing these games, because they work so much better. And that's true of just about any Atari machine, except maybe the Atari Jaguar. Most Atari machines have this kind of plug, this kind of connection for the controller, and if you plug in a Sega Genesis controller, you will get much better handling out of it, I promise. So we'll take a look at the other one here. Okay, this is Junior here, And Junior looks very much like, and this is why I keep Junior here, Junior looks very much like an Atari 5200 or an Atari 7800. If you take a look back, you know, there's the Rava ramp, but if you take a look there, you see that the three units really, they look alike. You know, that they were getting their aesthetics together, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. Same thing. On the back of this here, channel selector, joystick connection, difficulty, another joystick connection over here. There's the line out. There's the power. What's cool about this is the line out it isn't connected to it. You can actually detach this completely, and there's nothing to it. This was the Fun Is Back Atari when they re-released the 2600 a little bit later, just about the time the NES was coming out, mid 80s. They re-released the Atari 2600 and they had this, the fun is back. Yes siree, it's the 2600 from Atari, and this is what it was. This is your power switch, on and off, turn off. Okay, and black and white and color TV here. Select button, you push this, and reset button is here. Okay, so it's the exact same lineup as the switches on the 2600 Vader, or even some of the later 2600s, other than the first one that had the difficulty switch also on the sides here. But it's the same kind of arrangement, just much smaller, much sleeker, much more portable if you're taking it somewhere, and much cooler looking, in my opinion. And I may get some, you know, some disagreement there, but I just think it looks a lot cooler. I think it looks a lot more like a modern console than some kind of like 70s record player. But let's look at some of the games. Yep. Old cartridges. These old cartridges. Yes, more old cartridges here. I mean, who can forget Asteroids? I mean, come on, Asteroids. Look at this stuff. This is good stuff right here. I mean, this is where it's all at. You know, there's good old Pac-Man and Mousetrap and all kinds of other crap. There, these are like the top shelf type games here. You know, we got Return of the Jedi, we got Omega Race there. I mean, you really can't, you know, Christ, you got Phoenix. Oh, 2 pole positions. Popeye, Space Invaders. Space Invaders, of course, being one of the games that really put the system on the map. One of the only smart things that Warner Brothers did was license this game. You know, Missile Command. Here's another Mousetrap in here, another Space Invaders. It's one of those systems that you end up with a lot of doubles on because you find them at yard sales for, like, you know, a quarter. But there's that to give you that good old-fashioned old cartridge feeling. We're going to look at some of these right now. We'll see what they look like on the actual screen. Okay, let's just bang out a bunch of these real quick. How's that sound? Asteroids. Well, here's Berserk. This actually looks kind of like Berserk. They didn't do a bad job with this. A little Omega Race. I'm not sure how you fire in this thing. Ooh. I think you might need a special controller for this. I'm not able to fire. Ooh. I don't know. If anybody has any tips, leave a comment below. Doesn't look like I'm firing very well. Nope, can't fire. Yeah, baby, it's Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Ooh. Ooh. I didn't say I was good at it. I'm sure you have no idea what this game is. Ooh, that didn't last very long. I got my difficulty set too high. Yeah, well, if only they could have made Pac-Man this good. Ah, you little fart knocker. Oh, what are these things? Yeah, California games. And this actually, if you look at the graphics of this, you gotta wonder how the hell they did this. I mean, this looks like ColecoVision. This is a hacky sack type thing. Right on. This is Turmoil. This has some of the funkiest sounds and graphics in any 2600 game. Check it out. Very fast-paced game. Wow. Do you want to Tron with me? Ooh. Alright, one more and then I'm definitely done. Junior Pac-Man. Aw. What is a bicycle? Who the hell eats a bicycle? Actually, I think I saw a guy on a show called That's Incredible in the 80s that ate a bicycle. Took him a while, though. Now, at the end of the day, the Atari 2600 had some long legs. They lasted into the 90s after having started in the late 70s. It's a long time. Probably longer than any other console. And they inspired a lot of homebrew games. And, of course, they've been emulated, which recently, a couple of years ago, Atari went after people that were emulating their stuff. Apparently whoever bought the company, you know, Atari's been sold a bunch of times, and right now they're bankrupt again. But, you know, they went after people that were emulating their stuff, and rightfully so. They shut down they went after a lot of these websites that have the Stella emulator, and they closed them down. They also started going after homebrew makers. But it still happens, and they're still available. And Atari's bankrupt now, so I'm sure it'd be okay if you start homebrewing again. Anybody that got in trouble for that, I'm sure it's not going to be a problem at this point. The Atari 2600 is a no-brainer. You gotta have one, whether you're a collector or not. If you don't have one, are you sure you don't have one? Go look in your attic, because maybe you do, you just forgot about it. Now, if you play video games at all, you really should have one lying around. Stick it on a TV in the basement, put it someplace in the house, keep it around. But, I mean, you can't beat those old games. It's for anyone and everyone. Light collectors, hardcore collectors, or just people that like games. You know, if you run into one at a yard sale for a couple of bucks and a bunch of games for, you know, 50 cents a piece, which can happen with those things, grab it, pick it up. These days on eBay, a lot of people are highballing things like that. They're selling them for more than what they really probably are worth. Since they are so common and you can get them just about, you know, anywhere where there's a retro gaming shop, and those are cropping up everywhere anymore. You can find them. They're very common. There's 1,000,001 peripherals for them, 1,000,001 joysticks, and 1,000,001 games, and the games usually come cheap. They're like a couple of bucks. I recommend the Atari 2600 to anyone and everyone. So, if the fun is not back in your place or in your collection, make the fun come back with an Atari 2600.